Thank you so much for joining us
that.
this evening. It's really exciting to have you with us to discuss dangers of investigative journalism, the risk behind the scene. So we'd like to know, for the times you've been, of course, you're still in journalism, because I don't think we really retire from this. How has it been so far?
Yeah, the danger is real. If you can hear me, the danger is real and it's mortal. And I want to, before I get to personal experiences, I want to say that that danger is not limited to our constituency, Nigeria. Our location, Nigeria, is not limited here. It's actually global. And the Global Journalism House takes a period every 2 years to examine some of these dangers and to take a step on how to begin to actually address some of these challenges. Now, a few years ago, I think it was in 2019, a few of us represented Nigeria at Hamburg in Germany, where some of those discussions were held. And I believe that your chief executive, your chairman was actually at that Hamburg convention of global investigative journalists, from across the world. And so in Nigeria here, let me start by reminding or mentioning to us that the dangers are real. It's an everyday thing because you are looking to unravel serious issues that actually would undermine the personal positions and powers of the powerful and mighty. And I want to start by mentioning that the idea or the experience or the novelty of electronic bomb, that's a mail bomb, that's a letter bomb that we experienced in Nigeria some decades ago, which took the life of the chief executive of Newswatch magazine, Delegiwa, was, and it's believed to be, an outcome, an aftermath of an investigation he was involved in. Personally, at my personal level, at the time that I worked with the African Concord, it was almost an everyday thing, because at that point, you had the military in power, and the military in the way they handled their own things, if you unsettle them, they can decide to take your life, and that will just be it. So the dangers are real. And when I mentioned the time of the military government in Nigeria, it doesn't mean that the danger has become any less during the democratic era, because you will recall a few years ago, about 3 years ago or more, there's a young man. He wasn't really on any platform, but he was, that's an independent journalist who was critical of a certain government, somewhere up north, called Daddy Yatta. That was his pen name. And after a while, the young man was disappeared. And for over 3 years now, nobody has heard or seen or had any clue about his whereabouts. So the dangers are real. The dangers are with us. The only thing we can do concerning this is, perhaps I will expect that might be in your next questions, but the thing that I need to say is that the dangers are real. And my personal experience, to get into that, at a point I was actually detained, I was jailed, for a work we did for African Concord. And because it affected the mighty and powerful. That was when General Abacha was in power. And his chief security officer was the guy we did an expo on some of the things that he was doing. And for 7 months, it was clear that they were looking for me. I had to go underground. And when you go underground, your means of livelihood is not assured. You don't know who knows you, you don't know who might block you anywhere and so on and so forth. So you are under constant life-threatening, existential threat. And so after 7 months, eventually they tracked me down and picked me. Well, I was lucky, I wasn't disappeared. They took me to Awolowo Road, detained me there. And some of us were among the journalists and the detainees that the Pope, who visited Nigeria not long before General Abacha died, pleaded, and some of us were actually released. So yes, and I also remember while we were at Concord, a few of our colleagues, who were working with the Concord, were disappeared. I remember one guy, Chinedu. He traveled to his village in Imo State. He left his village coming back to Abuja. He never reached Abuja, and up till now, nobody has seen or known where he's been to. So
right,
those
Dr.
dangers are always.
Dr. Biora,
Yes.
do I have your attention? All right then.
Yes,
So
go
why
ahead.
exactly do government officials and also powerful institutions use legal intimidations when dealing with journalists, especially in an investigative report? Why do they always go through that angle?
Did you say legal intimidation? Did you say legal intimidation?
Yes, Dr. Biora, I said so.
Yeah, intimidation is never legal. That's one thing. Intimidation is, excessive use of power. And because the people who are afraid of investigative journalism are usually the powerful, not only because they are powerful, but they are also, they are also predatory. And their ego is always there. They don't want anything to, to undermine their position. And so the only easy thing they need to know is to identify that it is just one person that is involved, because when you are doing that investigative journalism, when you are doing the investigation, you don't let everybody know. You narrow, your steps, your movements to just you and your contacts. And so the moment you identify that, the tendency for them is that the way to stop this thing is just to eliminate you. And so that's essentially the tendency that you have. And it's not peculiar to Nigeria. It's all over the world. It's all over the world. The powerful has the instinct to use his power excessively to either intimidate or to eliminate.
All right. So doctor, how can journalists, preserve themselves from harassment or some of these dangers while on duty?
Yeah, it has always been a subject of concern. Each, biannual global investigative conference that journalists come together and confer on that. There is no shortcut. There's no specific, way that you say this is what will stop that. Now, but the advice we always get each time, based on personal experiences, and the advice we will give the younger ones is, be
Dr.
careful.
Biora, please, can you keep your phone on landscape mode? We're having a problem with the vision.
Yeah, it's on that landscape. Is it okay now?
Yeah, it is. Please go on.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so what I was saying then is that there is no sure way that eliminates, the powerful from trying to stifle the voice of the investigative journalist. But the only advice you give journalists is map your plan, map your way, know what time is safe for you to go where you have to go, Make sure that you, if you are going to stay, for instance, in a hotel, make sure that, in fact, let me just start this. First and foremost is that investigative journalism is usually very expensive. It's not something you do on shoestrings. So every journalist must know that. Sometimes if you need to be in town, in one town, where probably, where essentially nobody knows that you are going to be there, and you are going to be in a hotel, it might be advisable, it might be necessary for you to actually book into two hotels, distances apart from each other. And what you see in the day when you go out, or what you feel in the night when you are coming back to your hotel, will now determine where you will think you will go and stay. So essentially, what is one saying? As a journalist, you have to be very, very careful. You have to know that you are stepping on very powerful toes, and they are toes of people who have the power, as we could say that, of life and death. So you have to be careful. Number two, every movement you make, please inform your editor. That doesn't stop the powerful from striking against you, but it makes sure that somebody, at least one person in the organization, knows what you are doing, knows where you are, knows the possible dangers that you are going to run into, and so on and so forth. Nothing eliminates the dangers that are available against investigative journalism, but you can only be take as precautionary measures as you can, and then leave the rest to God.
All right, Doctor, do you think media platforms, media organizations, the owners are really doing enough in safeguarding reporters while going out to carry out these duties? Because there are cases whereby you see reporters going out to, for reports that are very sensitive and they are not armed with the right, shall I say, equipment, like life jacket, or shall I say, some security men or some first aid kits should there be an emergency. Do you think the media platforms, should also be held responsible in these kind of challenges?
Now, responsibility is across board. It's not just to the owners of the platforms. Have once been, an owner effectively, but now, I have stepped back kind of, so I know that the challenges, and you can't say what will happen. It might just be a normal demonstration. Now, let me mention this because our environment is somehow, let me illustrate it with an example. Some years ago, an attaché with a television house here in Abuja, followed some reporters, the reporters who were going to cover a protest that was happening at Ego Square in Abuja. And then all of a sudden, this is a protest. It was not a riot. It was in the open field, the open space of Ego Square. And all of a sudden, a policeman now, pulls the triggers and starts shooting. And the bullet, a hot lead, just went straight into the body of this young intern who was coming to experience journalism for the first time. And the guy died. Now, the thing is, who would have imagined that a protest by citizens will become an avenue for people who are carrying? Why would you carry guns to go and restrain demonstrators? So the thing is, it's not only for us to say, yes, the owners of the media houses, the proprietors of the platforms. No, society as a whole. And when I'm talking about society, I just mentioned to you the challenge that the law enforcement agents, provide or bring into our atmosphere. Now, let me give you the constitutional aberration that we also have in Nigeria, because we need to look at some of these things before you now say, okay, let the blame go this way, let the blame go the other way, and so on and so forth. Now, the constitutional aberration that we have is that, have you paid attention as a journalist to the fact that, yeah, I'm hearing you. Hearing you, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So I'm mentioning the constitutional aberration, that you have a constitution in chapter 2, I think it's section 35 and another section that provides
Okay. All right. So it seems that there is some sort of network challenge with that very one. But then again, being a journalist is an exciting job, the passion and everything. But then again, in that excitement, there is that side risk that one needs to look out for and be careful while doing the business. But then again, I have experienced something like this in one of my reportage that I went for one of the times like that in Lagos, where same, just like you mentioned, we have tear gas and what have you. Then I was reporting. I would have left, but that was when everything was getting to the climax, and I really needed to, say something, capture that moment. But I've also come to understand that it's not just about having the passion and going out for this. You also have to check yourself. Do you have any health challenge? In cases like that, many people collapsed. There was somebody that actually fainted, while running. But these were just normal residents, that were involved in the protests, But as a journalist, if you're going out for things like this, there are questions you should ask yourself. Am I healthy enough to embark on this kind of journey, this task? So am I a good swimmer? If it's what you have to join the canoe,
Are you a good driver
good driver as well. Ask yourself these questions. Should you find yourself in places like this? Can you swim so you don't, drown in a boat or something? Should the boat capsize or what have you? Now, these are questions that journalists should also ask themselves. In as much as they are pointing of fingers, to the government, to residents and what have you, you can also ask yourself this question.
All right, Dr. Biora is back. Doctor, go ahead. You were, trying to finish your points on the last question.
It's all part of this atmosphere of our work that I mentioned. So the Constitution requires the press, the media, to undertake certain responsibilities in society. But do you know that it is only the press that the Constitution has given an assignment and takes away the power of appropriation from the press? So every other agency in Nigeria has authority to draw from the resources of Nigeria to do their work, not the press, not the media. Whether you are independent media or public media, there is no provision that makes that, So essentially, what am I saying? I'm saying in effect that the blame can actually go around. The blame should actually go around. The government, the security agencies, the structure of the media, the regulators, and so on and so forth. Those who license, organizations, without requiring them to provide certain things and so on and so forth. And then the provisions that should make insurance compulsory. Insurance for practitioners and so on and so forth. And then it does not also take responsibility. It doesn't absorb the associations, the professional associations, from the responsibilities. So the challenge, the blame can actually go around. So it's not only about the owners of the platforms.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Chukwumba. Let's also find out from you regarding these same dangers of investigative journalism. What role does the society, citizens, communities can also play in preserving these journalists while going out to carry out, a particular report or investigations? Because we've heard of cases whereby these things are happening and some of these citizens would rather mind their business to the detriment of these journalists.
You see, the basis of even the safety for the entire society is tied to effective investigative journalism. And where you have society, where you have members of the public that are not educated enough, that are not aware, that are not very conscious of the connection between investigative journalism and their own safety, that's where you have, a sense of aloofness, a sense of disconnection to what is happening to the journalist, who is under threat by the powers that be. So essentially, the members of the public, as individuals, as organizations, the NGOs, the NGOs and so on and so forth, should from time to time use, what we'll call, is it mass action they call it, or, a particular kind of litigation, that brings the powerful to account in one way or the other. So yes, I agree with your suggestion. Members of the society has a role, and their role is first and foremost to understand that their own safety is tied to what the investigative journalist is doing, and for them to actually know that they need for self-preservation, they need to find a way to also be, as a defenders of the journalists.
All right, Doctor, let's look at the psychological effects this could have on the journalists. As humans, they go through so much in the process of carrying out this particular report, and also they could have life-threatening encounters. If some of them could actually, get injured or even get kidnapped, some people even die in processes like this. What is the society, or rather, what is the organization doing for the mental health of these journalists? Do they have a clinic or like a therapy session, and not just having rounds of interviews on the particular subject matter, but also if there is an aftermath of what happens after they are done with these particular reports?
Thank you very much for that question. The trauma issue with journalists has become a major concern. I'd mentioned earlier on about the concerns at the Global Investigative Journalism conferences. It has also, the trauma issue has become a concern. And what I think should be done is it's not something that you ask the owners of the platforms, to handle alone. The associations, you see, the Guild of Editors, the NGE, the NUJ, and then, of course, the Newspaper Proprietors Association of Nigeria, and then the rest of them. There should be a fund available for this kind of a thing. And how do you create such kind of a fund? You start by, present your argument. Present your argument. There are platforms, there are organizations, there are agencies that are funded by bringing out 0.5% of the import of certain things that has to do with what they do. And it is committed to safeguarding the sustainability issue in such sectors. Now, we have not evolved in journalism to the point where we can sit down at NUJ convention, at NGA convention, at Newspaper Appropriation of Nigeria. Everybody is still, triggered by their own individual personal motivations and so on and so forth. So that group concern is where the gap is. And what does the group concern is? When you come together and then you channel your demand. This is what we are demanding from this government. This is what we are demanding from this government. Whoever you are, whatever you are, the preservation and the sustainability of the media in Nigeria is paramount to the sustainability of democracy in Nigeria. And for this purpose, all the cameras, all the equipment you use in your studio are mostly imported. Now, one fraction of what you pay as duties come to that sector to develop it and to make sure that the professionals who work there are, catered for. This is how development, this is how sectors, this is how people who want to develop, who want to grow, think. Group thought, group thinking, groups preservation, and so on and so forth. So essentially, I think it is high time, that those who are in NGE, that those who are leaders in NUJ, and that those who are Newspaper Proportion of Nigeria, Newspaper Operators Association of Nigeria, and so on and so forth, begin to come together and begin to give, consideration to some of these things. There should
All right.
be, there's
Yeah,
no
Doctor, let's look at the
there's
use
no,
of technology tools, rather, to aid, the investigative journalism, and how it can also hinder investigative journalism. Looking at it from the angle of safety, using it, to as a guard to where you're going to, and also a guide, protecting you as a surveillance, also gathering data regarding the kind of report you're going to uncover, what data, what knowledge do you need to gather before going for such a report? And also, what information do you also need to gather in that area, to know if it's safe, to know the length of what you're going for and what you shouldn't go for. And then some, in foreign movies, we see some of these journalists carrying out like camera that, like pen, that can capture areas live, so that people from their area can be seen where they're going to, to monitor their every move and what have you. How can these be used to manage the, the risks, the danger regarding investigative journalism?
Thank you. Technology has done so much. Technology has done so much, but everything about technology still boils down to human management. Practically everything about technology still boils down to human management. And I know where your question is going to, but a few years ago, we sent some reporters to somewhere in the north. I don't want to be very specific. We sent some reporters to somewhere in the north, and it was an area that is buffeted by security issues. And we had some technology, some devices that we logged on with them before they left. So, and we agreed, had a conversation with them each day before they leave where they are. There's a routine we'll take so that it's a way of, that's being sure that they have not been either captured or killed. So each day that passes, we'll know that they are still alive. They don't need to call. It's just that tracker, a kind of tracker, So yeah, that's technology. Now, the other thing you were talking about, secret cameras that you can, or recorders and so on and so forth. Yeah, those are things that technology has done that you can use, but they also have their own limitations. If you are not allowed, to the location where where you would have gotten to, for you to actually assess what is going on there, the technologies will be nearly useless. So you have to have access to that location first and foremost, and that calls for human resources and so on and so forth. So yes, there are quite a number of technological devices that can be used that will be a help to the journalist, that will enhance, what he is doing, but these things are also very costly. And some of them you will almost like need a license from the NSA's office for you to actually acquire them. So this is where we are. Our society is not so open that you can lay hands on any of those things. And the cost, we cannot also ignore the costs. Not every media organization can, sustain the overhead costs and still invest in some of these appliances and devices. They are pretty expensive, but they are needed. They are needed. We must acknowledge that.
All right, thank you, Doctor. We are still looking at the dangers of investigative journalism, the risk behind the scene. Quinsley previously talked about, having some sort of therapy or shall I say mental health for these journalists, even after their investigation, just to keep them sane and make sure everything is going on smoothly with them. Let's also look at it from the legal angle. Now, most journalists are scared to go out to even carry out investigative journalism because they are not sure of the protection, the legal protection that they would get regarding exposing some of these, bigwigs that may carry out some of the, investigations that may be victims of these investigations. How can that be addressed as an investigative journalist?
Yeah, it comes back to what I was talking about groupthink, about thought leadership within the sector. And that what is required for today's journalism cannot be effectively handled by the individual management of the different platforms and organizations. It cannot. And the only way for us to effectively handle some of these challenges would be as a group for the sector to come together, the leaders within that sector to come together and chart a way. How do you, from within the resources, from within the sector, present a meaningful solution that affords you the resources to handle, number one, the insurance policy for your staff who might be endangered in the course of duty, the trauma issues and hospitalization, and then the devices and the equipment that you need to have in order to do your job.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight on Signature Evening.
Signature TV, news in your pocket.